magid rachzu moitzi matzu muroir koirai shilcham noiraich sofin burai chalal nirtzu.
Hello everyone, we are up to event number 8, and that is the event that happens on Shabbos morning after we made Kiddush, ate a lechem mishnah, which whatever mode you decided. We have to, of course, physically get rid of the chametz that's left over, if there's any left over, and also say BITUL chametz. So let's start with the second, and then we'll get back for the first. BITUL chametz basically is a verbal declaration that any chametz that I didn't find, that I didn't physically get rid of, I want it to be mivutal. Whatever that might mean, if it means I want to make it ownerless, if it means it for me like dust, if it means that it has no chashivut in my eyes, it has no importance in my eyes, it's very important to say it just to cover yourselves on a biblical level. So indeed, the Shulchan Aruch says that while we burn the chametz on Erev Shabbos, the Ramah points out, Uveyom Shabbat yevatlenu. And obviously for a very simple reason, as the Mishnah Bura explains, Ve'ino tzarich levatel be'erev Shabbat b'sha'at bi'uro. You don't have to say bitul chametz on Friday, meaning a day early, when you burn it. Why? The sof sof yet tzarich levatel b'yom machar. Anyway, you're going to have to say bitul chametz again. Sharei chozer v'zocher b'pat shemasheir v'tzorech haShabbat. If people are going to leave chametz over for Friday night, Shabbos morning, they're going to have to say it again. So it's useless to say it on Friday. Therefore, we say it on Shabbos morning. So once again, on Shabbos morning, before the time that you can't own chametz, which is an hour before midday, you're supposed to say the bitul chametz. And from this perspective, ultimately, we finish eating chametz 4 halachic hours into the day, and we get rid of the chametz and say bitul chametz 5 hours into the day. But even this is not without machlokas, as everything else is regarding Erev Pesach Shechal Liot b'Shabbat. So the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim Daf Mem Tet Amud Aleph brings a machloket Tanaim between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim. Rabbi Meir says to get rid of all the chametz before Shabbos, and yet the Chachamim, the majority opinion, says no, on Shabbos. The Baal Hamor, which many a times brings sensational points of view, on this particular level explains it very straightforward, and says the Baal Hamor that according to Rabbi Meir, you have to get rid of the chametz before Shabbos, everything, meaning Shabbos morning there's nothing more left to do, and that's because, for a very simple reason. He says the only way to get rid of chametz is to burn it. You can't burn it on Shabbos, obviously. You won't light a fire on Shabbos, and therefore by default you have to get rid of it on Friday. But the majority opinion says there's other ways to get rid of the chametz. For example, mefarer v'zoreh laruach umetil layam. You could basically make it into small little pieces and flush it down the toilet. You could make it into small little pieces and throw it out to the wind, or you can throw it into the ocean, whatever the methods that are actually permitted on Shabbos, and therefore there's no reason to get rid of it on Friday. You can leave your lechem mishnah, let's say pitot, for Friday night, Shabbos morning, you finish eating it by the 4th halachic hour, and then you get rid of it by flushing it down the toilet, or by throwing it into the wind, or I'll add, put some bleach on it to make it inedible even for a dog's consumption, and throw it in the trash can out. Better outside your house. So, seems very straightforward. This is their machlokes. However, when we get to the Rambam, we get a problem. Why? Because when the Rambam brings this, you would expect the Rambam to paskin like the majority opinion, and that is that on Shabbos morning, we get rid of the chametz, albeit not by burning it, but by the other methods. So indeed, the Rambam comes along and says, Chala bar saliyot b'Shabbat, when indeed the Erev Pesach comes out on Shabbos, you leave the chametz, say the pitot, to eat it up to 4 halachic hours into the day. And make sure to leave it in a bag away from all the Pesach stuff. And you're supposed to get rid of all the rest before Shabbos. And if there's anything left on Shabbos, then he doesn't say flush it down the toilet. He doesn't say to make it into small pieces and throw it out to the wind, like the majority opinion of the Chachamim, but rather he says, very surprisingly, you kofeh alav kli, you put something over it, umamotze yom tov arishon, and Sunday night, or chutz la'aretz Monday night, you go ahead and you burn it. Seems very strange. He paskins like Rabbi Meir, which is a singular opinion that says you have to burn it, and not like the majority opinion saying there's different ways to get rid of the chametz that are permitted on Shabbos. And the question is, why? And indeed, the Ravid attacks the Rambam, as he many times does, that, quite frankly, at the end of the day, the majority opinion is that you can get rid of it on Shabbos. So why we burn it on Friday to fulfill that one opinion, we can also get rid of it on Shabbos by the other opinions. So why is it that the Rambam sort of made a chulent here? On the one hand, he says you can use chametz on Shabbos, but on the other hand, he says if there's anything left over, all bets are off. You have to put something on it so that after Yontiv, you'll burn it. It seems like he made a mishmash. Once again, the Rambam seems to have paskin like the minority opinion, saying burn it on Friday, and whatever's left over, there's nothing you can do. You have to burn it. Shabbos is off the table. Yontiv is off the table. You have to wait till after Yontiv to burn it. Why didn't he paskin like the majority opinion that says you can make it into small pieces and flush it down the toilet, for example? So indeed, the answer probably is the intertwining between Hilchos Shabbos and Pesach. The Mishnah Lamelech explains that indeed, according to the Rambam, on any Shabbos, it's a problem to take bread and to make it into small pieces for a very simple reason. And I quote his words, the Da'at Rambam, Asol lefarer halechem b'Shabbat, de'ahave tolada dedochein. Shabbos, there is one of the 39 that's forbidden, is called tochein, making something into very small pieces. According to the Rambam, that's forbidden. Others disagree and say that there's no tochein except for things that God made, not things that man made. And man made chametz. He made dough into bread. Actually, he made the dough itself. But the Rambam's opinion is that ultimately anything is off the table to make into small pieces on Shabbos, and therefore you got no choice. If there's any chametz left over, you got to put kli, some sort of a vessel on it, and only after Yontiv burn it. That's the Mishnah Lamelech's approach in the Rambam. Rabbeinu Manoach, another parish on the Rambam, basically agrees, but he puts it down to a derabanan level by saying matzi avi de dami l'tchina. It looks like tochen, even though it's not tochen. It assumes that midoraisa needs to be something that's made. Ultimately, is like fruits or vegetables, not something that a human being made, namely something like bread. But the Minchas Chinuch has a totally different take on the Rambam's opinion. He says it has nothing to do with Shabbos, it has to do with Pesach. On Pesach, regarding the mitzvah of the Yom HaRishon, Tashpitu Seor Mibatechem, on the first day, which means Erev Pesach, you're supposed to get rid of the chametz. There's a very interesting chakira, as we call it in halachic Lumdisha language. Does that mean you just have to make sure there's no chametz in the house, or does that mean you have to actively buy chametz in order to get rid of it? And he says, according to the Rambam, yeah, you don't need to have chametz. You actually can get rid of it all. And that would fulfill the mitzvah of tashpitu, the mitzvah of getting rid of the chametz. Namely, the mitzvah of tashpitu means you have to make sure there's no chametz in the house. And if there isn't, you've done your work. You don't have to actively buy chametz, put out the 10 pieces in order to get rid of it. No. You have to make sure there's no chametz in the house. And therefore, that's the Rambam's plan for Shabbos. But if for some reason you do have chametz in the house, then get rid of it after Yontiv, because in his opinion, you don't have to actively get rid of it on Erev Pesach. Those that disagree, which is the majority opinion, the Chachamim say, no, A, you need to have chametz in the house, and B, you have to actively get rid of it on Erev Pesach. And therefore, the only way to do it is to make it into small pieces and flush it down the toilet. So, to sum up, the next event is event number 8, which is Shabbos morning. Before the 5th halachic hour of the day, we have to A, get rid of our chametz in permissible ways, if there is any left over, which the majority opinion says, throw it down the toilet, put some bleach in it and throw it in the garbage, outside your property. And B, say BITUL chametz. Interestingly, the Rambam doesn't acknowledge that second point and basically says, just make sure you don't have chametz in the house. That's the best thing to do. But if you do have chametz in the house, put a kli on it and burn it after Yontiv. In general, we don't paskin like the Rambam on this, and therefore, if there's any chametz left over on Shabbos, get rid of it. Throw it down the toilet, throw it in the garbage outside your property, or if there is no garbage outside your property, pour bleach on it, and then throw it out even within your property.
ויפרקנו מצרנו שבשפלנו זכר לנו ויפרקנו מצרנו